Broadcasting from Studio 202 at the Springett Technology Center in Navasota, Texas. It's NOV Live. Now, here's your host, Michael Gaines.
I'm not Michael Gaines. Oh, hello and welcome to NOV Live. I am not Michael Gaines. As you can see, I'm Shelby Dumaine here in the studio today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you here on the show. Even though Michael's not here, this is still NOV Live, the show where we bring you technical experts and technologies from around the world here from NOV. We bring that information to you so you can learn a little bit about us, kind of behind the scenes and what we're up to. Today we have some really phenomenal guests, some experts here to talk to you about carbon capture, utilization, and storage, a story of collaboration for success. So it's going to be a really great interview. We're going to get some great information for you. But before we do get to those experts, I'm going to keep you hanging for a little bit. We're actually going to go over to Danielle. This might be, normally we're used to seeing me, but today we have Danielle Francis, who's going to tell us a little bit about how you can get involved if you're watching the show. Hi, Danielle.
Hey, Shelby. Thanks so much for having me here today. It feels so strange, actually, to be sitting here where usually I'm watching you and Michael, and I have my phone. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to talk to the audience members now and welcome them. And I want to welcome you all to interact with us today. This is the perfect time for you to do that. Let us know where you're from in the comment section below, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Feel free to share any questions you may have during the show. And I'll be behind the scenes going through the questions and selecting a few for our guest. And we'll have a live Q&A after with your questions. If you are watching this show after the live broadcast and you have any questions, either that's this episode or any other episodes from the past, you can send us an email at socialmedia@nov.com. Since we love questions, I think this is the perfect time for us to ask you one with our Rig Geek Post of the Week. But I think we should call it the Carbon Capture Geek of the Week.
Rig Geek's Post of the Week.
Now, today's question is, what are the global CO2 emissions last year? Or what were the global CO2 emissions last year? You should be able to see the question on the bottom of your screen. And I'll go ahead and read it one more time. That was, what were the global CO2 emissions last year? Go ahead and leave your answers down below in the comment section, and we will give you the answer after the show. So I think it's time to get this party started. Back to you, Shelby.
I love that. I love that kind of transition to me. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm looking forward to seeing what that Rig Geek answer is. So yeah, definitely let us know. Now to kick it off, I do want to introduce the experts that I kind of teased there at the beginning. So we're really excited. We have some great folks here on the show. First off, in the studio, we have Assaad Mohanna, who, if you're a viewer of the show, you might recognize. He's the Senior Director of Low Carbon Solutions. So thank you so much for joining here in the studio live. And our next guest, she's not in the studio, but we're so thankful. And hopefully one day we can get her out here to Navasota. But we have Marija Milenkovic. She is the Director of Strategic Initiatives. So hi, Marija. Thank you so much for joining us today as well. All right, to kind of kick it off, we're going to be saying the acronym CCUS here a lot this show. So can you just kind of tell our audience a little bit about what is CCUS? What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. CCUS is carbon capture, use, and storage. Sometimes it's referred to also as use and sequestration. It's pretty much capturing carbon from a source point or an emitting source and taking that gas, handling it, conditioning it, and then either using it for tertiary recovery purposes or enhanced oil recovery by pumping it into the ground, or other use methods, or you could just pump it down in the ground just for permanent storage for hundreds or thousands of years in either depleted reservoirs that had been producing oil and gas or in saline aquifers to keep that stored in there. And the idea is to reduce the emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So why CCS? Why not solely rely on other renewables like wind or solar?
I think it's important to differentiate between energy and electricity. So wind energy and solar energy can do a great job in replacing power sources. So when we're talking about replacing electricity generation from either coal-fired power plants or natural gas-fired power plant or natural gas power plants, then that's where renewable sources could come in. But emissions come from a lot of other sources in our economy too. Electricity takes about a quarter of the world's emissions. Another quarter goes for world transportation, whether it's air, land, or marine. And almost a bit less, the other half goes to industry and gas processing and industries like steel and iron and cement, which are hard to abate industries is what they call them. And so, the carbon capture comes in as a solution for those permanent spaces to reduce the emissions from them on an ongoing basis, while we also do renewables to replace the electrification aspect of it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and I know, so CCUS is kind of, it's been around, we've been hearing about it. So Marija, can you tell me a little bit, what do CCUS technologies look like in the field today, right now?
Well, great question, Shelby. And if you let me, probably we could sit and talk for hours, but I'll try to be brief. So let's start with the the second C in CCUS, which is the capture part. So in terms of post-combustion carbon capture, there are multiple technologies at different stages of readiness level. The one that is commercially ready and tested and proven over many decades within gas processing is the amine solvent technology. And this technology really, as I said, has been deployed from I believe 1930s in the different industries of the past century. But it does come with its own challenging in terms of the cost level and the economics. There are other technologies that are based on solid absorbents, cryogenic processes, membranes, combination of these technologies, where the economics looks more positive, but they are at the lower technology readiness level. And it will take time and effort and money to develop them, test them, and bring them to the full commercial stage. So just in short, there is a variety of technologies for carbon capture, but one thing is actually very sure, that there is not going to be one technology that suits all emission sources. As Assaad already touched upon it, there is a wide variety of different emission sources, and the best match between the CO2 emitter and the technology will need to be done pretty much on the one-on-one case-to-case basis. And then the U in CCUS, or utilization of or the use of the CO2 and converting CO2 into the valuable product, this is a whole different universe and very different sort of set of new technologies and novel developments, and in very the area where I'm very passionate about. So this one I could really talk on for probably not hours but days. And the majority of the CO2 utilization technologies are new. They are in the early stages of the development, and there are still quite a few unanswered questions. But it is in the sense of potential, and what these technologies have the ability to do is convert CO2 from a waste stream into a valuable product, be that it's building materials or different forms of carbon or chemicals, and then eventually that will lead to the circular carbon management. So right now, CO2 utilization and converting CO2 into valuable products, it is a high focus point with many of our clients, very different industries, including NOV.
If I may, I'll add to Marija, and great summary on the CCUS. I think what we try to do, and as things have evolved, is treat carbon like we've treated data in the last decade. There was a ton of data out there we didn't know what to do with, and we figured out ways to capture that data, to use it, and now to store it in clouds, and to make sure that it adds value to our operation. And so that same thinking process is happening with something a little bit more dirty to the environment, a little bit hard to put a hand on a global basis. Very different geographically depending on where you go. Very diverse in terms of industries and vectors that you touch, and a lot less defined than data used to be for us. And so I think there's a big global task, which I believe we have extremely smart individuals in our organization and in our industry that are doing a lot of work to define that space and get the best possible ways to capture, use, and store.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I did want to also add, Marija, you say, if don't threaten me with, a good time saying you could talk all day, because next thing you know, I'm scheduling a 24-hour live stream, and we're going to talk about CCUS. So, you got to be careful. But that's
Anytime.
great. Yeah, I'm going to keep you to that, hold you to that. And so, Assaad, I wanted to kind of ask about, so any kind of time there's an emerging technology that kind of comes with challenges. That's kind of they go hand in hand. So what challenges do we see with this in the industry today?
Yeah, good question. I think like any new technology, we see kind of cost competitiveness, right, being a challenge. And while we see the value in capturing carbon from air or from emitting sources, the question is how to make them stand on their own feet without too much government support. And today, like wind energy started in 1917. If it wasn't for the governments like the Danish government who put a lot of capital supporting and subsidizing the industry, wind wouldn't be where it is today. And so carbon capture is going to have to go through that same development process where it's kind of babysat in the initial stages and carried until it becomes self-sufficient and sort of independent of government subsidies. So one is how to make carbon capture economical, and within that, I think there are a few things that come up. One of them is quality of carbon. And so it's easier to capture carbon from certain sources where you have more of a purer carbon source, which is where we've seen applications go on in the past. Natural gas being one of the more capturable carbon. Coal being a lot dirtier source, so a lot more processing, a lot more cost. Cement and steel being other sources that become more and more expensive. So that learning curve, it needs to get to a point where costs drop. And speaking of the learning curve, I think what solar and wind had an advantage in is where there was enough projects out there that the learning curve was extremely steep. With carbon capture, we have a couple of dozen projects around the world. Some of them have succeeded, some have not. A lot of them have used identical technology. There hasn't been too much venturing out into new spaces. And so I think one challenge we're going to have to overcome, and I think that's where regulation and policies come in, is to get that adoption rate to accelerate so that our learning curve, our failure rate also accelerates so that we can drive those costs down. So really a matter of cost driven by application, by technology, as well as policy and regulation to really frame a self-sufficient economy in carbon capture. I think Marija may have more to add as well.
Yeah, just one more thing, which is in order for this to get off the ground, we will need to see really collaboration across the CCUS value chain and a lot more sharing both in terms of the know-how as well as physical infrastructure. So the collaboration levels will need to go to a completely different point in order for CCUS to come to the scale it needs to come.
And I do have a follow-up, and I'm not going to press too much on cost, but I do kind of want to ask you, Assaad, how do we figure out like what the cost per ton is? How do we begin to figure that out?
If I had the answer to that, I would be extremely sought after and rich man. But the answer is there is no one answer. Right. There is a cost associated with very particular applications with givens on how much energy you could put your hands on in terms of waste energy from the facility. Remember, those carbon capture facilities are going to latch on to existing plants that have some sort of an end product. And so when you latch on this new facility, you're going to take away from that end product, and so reducing, so potentially increasing price. So there's a very delicate balance. So the big question is, do you go in and use up some of the energy that's available to you in terms of waste heat energy from the plant? Is that even available? If it's not, what are some other options? And so kind of a recycling mentality of how much can I use before I start spending on new capital? And so how we figure out cost is we take a plant, and that's what Maria and Maria's team probably are experts in, is go in and look at a facility and take all the inputs. And once we've defined what that space looks like and understood what sort of emissions it has, we plug it into this model that we've built internally and feed it all these assumptions, all these variables. It's not like this is a very accurate science, but we got it down to a point where we're able to tell that with this much variation, this much investment, and this much emissions, you can expect a cost that ranges between X and Y. And that gives you some sort of understanding as an owner of an emitting facility. What sort of capital you're looking for? What are you going to go ask for your investors? Do you qualify for government subsidies or not? And so giving you as close as possible as a assumption or evaluation of what does a virtual carbon capture plant cost and a dollar per ton basis to really make an educated guess and study to deliver. Because again, not enough of those happening around there. So you can't say, well, there's those 20 facilities that are just like mine have this much cost. That level of maturity doesn't exist. And so we've kind of found a way to bypass that and sort of create a shortcut to get as close as possible with an actually pretty good level of accuracy.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And as we kind of talk about all of these challenges we're facing, Maria, I kind of want to ask you, what is NOV doing to address those challenges or to meet those concerns?
In terms of, more
what
on
we
the
offer,
supply, in terms of what we are offering. Look, I come from supply chain background, and I always look at it from sort of supply chain risk and resilience standpoint, and that's how I've approached carbon capture, storage, and utilization as well. So it is really all about the ability to deliver high quality systems on time and on the budget, and really looking at our experience from natural gas, having more than 400 gas treatment projects around the globe in the past 4 decades. What we are doing is taking the technical and execution know-how to the CCUS delivery. So we know one thing for sure, that for carbon capture, conditioning, and for these novel technologies for utilization, process engineering knowledge, chemical engineering expertise, as well as delivering complex projects know-how will be critical. And NOV really has established execution and global supply chain models, and we have teams that have wide experience in delivering complex projects, as well as dealing with the constraints that are related to rolling out and implementing new technologies in the settings that are on the existing installations as retrofits, as well as the new developments. So really, it is taking on the delivery and the technical know-how from one setting into a completely new setting, but with very, very close ties and close links. So I hope that answered the question. But if anybody in the audience has a follow-up question on this, we'll be happy to take it in the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a great reminder. If you are watching and you have any questions so far, feel free to put them in the comments. And like Danielle mentioned, at the end of the show, we will be doing that live Q&A. So you have kind of a chance to be featured. So let us know now if you have any questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But before we get to those, now I kind of want to talk about a little, we mentioned this technology is not necessarily new. And so is there already R&D going? I know we're here, the studio is at the STC, the CCS Technologies Center, and we do a lot of research here. But are we utilizing any of those kind of research facilities to support CCUS?
Well, we do sit on a ranch, and we happen to have a lot of cows walking around the property, so lots of sources of carbon for sure.
Only.
But with all seriousness, this is a R&D facility where we've had innovation capabilities to develop a lot of the spaces that we talk about. So some things we can talk about in public, some others we cannot. But this is the place where all the innovation happens. And what we're doing is building adjacent to our innovation lab and robotics labs, a low carbon solutions lab or carbon capture lab that has all these newer technologies that, like Marija mentioned, have lower technology readiness level, where we can collaborate and bring in startups and universities and companies and operators and big players and emitters to find ways to move the conversation forward. It's not just a place for conversations, but it's also a place to build things and break them fast and learn quick, so that we can go out and deploy with a lot more certainty. So really an accelerator for lower technology readiness level aspects. Also, closer to where Marija is in Europe is in the Orkney Islands in Flota, which sits right at the tip of the UK. We have also capabilities for environmental testing, where it's another R&D hub for gas processing. Orkney is becoming a hydrogen hub for Northern Europe, and so perfectly placed to also, for anybody who wishes to have a nice big playground for gas processing and carbon capture, we do offer those capabilities, and we use them for our own sake to become smarter, more sophisticated, more advanced in developing technology that can compete at lower costs and use the newer technology.
Absolutely. I've mentioned maybe I'd say like half a dozen times to Michael when we can travel again that if we could maybe do a live show, I'd be happy to host one from the Orkney facility.
Right.
Pull,
Take
twist
you about
my arm. I'll
4
go
or 5
there.
flights to get there, but you'll get there eventually.
So ready for that. I would love to. But so those are the questions we have. I do want to, before we go to live questions, just one last thing, a couple ways folks can learn more about CCUS and kind of what NOV is doing in the space. I'd say the first way is they can check out our website, I think I might have added an extra W, www.nov.com/CCUS. So you can check that out. We'll have that on the screen so you can check out that webpage. And then there's a Heart Energy article that I saw this week featuring you, Assaad.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a round table on CCUS, or CCS, I think specifically. But it features Schlumberger, Halliburton, NOV, of course.
I like what Heart Energy did with that article. They put together 3 big companies that have been playing in the gas processing space and have, or in the drilling and well construction space to offer value in CCUS. And so the conversation was about what sort of capabilities does OFSE bring into the table, oil field services and equipment companies bring to the table. And I really got to say, I'm tremendously proud of the capabilities we brought to the table. Like Marija said, we bring decades worth of gas processing experience. We've processed millions, if not billions, of gas tons over the last several years. And I think carbon capture is something that sits very well in our capabilities, adjacent with the use aspect, with the storage aspect as well. I think all the conversations we're having with our customers are very well aligned with what NOV can do, and I think we're emerging as a leader in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really enjoyed that article. So if you watching this would like to read it as well, we're going to put it in the comment section, so we'll link it there. You can also, we'll be posting it in the next few days as well on the NOV channel, so you can check that out. It's definitely a great read. And with that, I won't take up any more time. We're going to get to your questions. So we're going to go back over to Danielle. What have they been saying there in the comments?
We've gotten a lot of great questions, and I chose a few to ask Assaad and Maria. The first one is, what else in energy transition is NOV investing in?
Oh yeah, I can answer that. So, like I said, there's quite a bit happening at NOV. We've taken the energy transition head on a couple of years ago in an effort to understand what is it all that we touch on, what skills can we bring into the space, and what we found out was it was a lot. It was a lot of things that we bring in, and so today we find ourselves quite mature in offshore wind. We're a market leader in the installation vessel technology design and equipment. And so 70% of the installed base worldwide is probably touched by an NOV designed vessel. That also evolves and goes into onshore wind, into floating wind, where we have our own floater design. And we've come in the news a couple of times with our floater for projects. We have some cool stuff coming in solar. We're geothermal. We're a natural fit in the geothermal space, and so we're talking to a lot of geothermal companies on how can we work together on also making conventional geothermal advanced and overcome some of the big challenges geothermal has. And also, you know, some even further spaces that touch on renewable natural gas or biogas capabilities. We're looking into spaces that touch on deep sea mining or lithium excavation from deep seas. And those are, you know, hydrogen is another fit for the capabilities that we provide. And so a lot of things coming in the pipeline. I think what we've realized is that there's a ton that we can do and use in terms of the energy transition space, and see it as a tremendous opportunity to make energy accessible, like we've done in oil and gas, through different energy sources as well. So we take pride in that.
Yeah, and you know, I may not be technically in the social media seat today, but I can't help myself. We do have some episodes, if you want to go to nov.com/live, we've done an episode on hydrogen. We've done one on offshore wind, geothermal. Yep. I'm sure I'm missing some, but we definitely have kind of on what technology we have there. So I would, you know, I can't help but advise the check that out.
I will add, Shelby, something about flare gas recovery emissions, and I will quickly reach my depth of knowledge on that one, and probably Maria can say a lot more on that than me.
Yes, that is one of the areas where there is direct links to the existing gas processing offering, and it is not necessarily directly linked to the carbon capture, storage, and utilization, but as Assaad mentioned, it is the offering along the energy transition and directly linked to the reduction of the emissions and reduction of flaring. So it is a topic that we get a lot of questions about from different operators. So if you are interested in that, I'll be happy to put you in touch with our subject matter experts.
There we go.
The
Another
other
show
thing
episode for me to get. You're saying?
Yes. Now, just one more thing that Assaad was mentioning in the beginning on the offshore wind. We do have also pretty extensive reference list by now from making actually structures in our yard in Indonesia for offshore wind farms around the globe. So it is also on that side of things of actually making sure that those structures are solid and well made is part of the NOV family delivery.
Maria wasn't kidding when she said we could talk about this for hours.
Again,
there's a ton of things going on.
You know, you're going to catch me doing a 24-hour live stream. You're making me more and more. Back to you, Danielle. Were there any more questions?
Yes, there was another question. That question was, what particular skill sets does oil and gas bring into this space?
Yeah, I think we touched a little bit on that. Maria, do you want to take a stab at this?
Sure. So in terms of the carbon capture, storage, and utilization, so on the capture part, there is literally direct correlation, I think we had on the screen, with natural gas processing. And specifically, if we are talking about the technology that is commercially ready for and has been deployed on several commercial carbon capture facilities, amine solvent, that's where both the technical and delivery execution know-how exists already in the oil and gas industry, since they have been deploying this for now many decades. But the primary sort of what I would link it beyond carbon capture, when you look at the whole chain, it is on that really supply chain expertise, both in terms of the existing supply chain and the ability to deliver the complex projects and deliver it with the precision and quality and time and the budget that is required. So those are sort of the direct links between the oil and gas industry and what's delivered, what needs to be delivered for CCUS. I mean, if you look at the specific components of the CCUS value chain, there is quite a lot more, and then we'll break even the 24-hour live stream.
That we might have to be more of a telethon if we have to keep going after that. But
Is that a word?
we'll get lots of coffee and you know Red Bull in the studio. But so Danielle, I'm gonna go back to you. I've been waiting. I want to know the Rig Geek answer, so I'm sure our audience out there does as well. So can you let us know?
Yes.
So the CCUS, what was it? The carbon capture.
Oh, the carbon capture geek of the week.
That's
I had to write it down. Because I was like, I'm going to forget this. But the question for today was, what are the global CO2 emissions last year? What were the global CO2 emissions last year? And we got some good answers. The answer is 32.3 gigatons or metric tons. Now, Maria, can you help us visualize that number?
It is tricky because it's so huge that I think visualizing it in your brain, it is sort of break the limits of the size. But 1 gigaton, not 32 gigatons, 1 gigaton is 10,000 fully loaded aircraft carriers. So it gives you the sensation of the size of the problem as well as the opportunity.
Man, yeah, that's hard to even visualize, but that's crazy. Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Danielle, for helping us with that, and thank you to Assaad and Maria for coming on the show today. It was really great. And again, if people want to learn more about CCUS, and I would check out NOV.com/CCUS would be the place to go for that. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for watching today, for tuning in on our show. If you want to watch any past episodes, that's at NOV.com/live. And we will be back next week with a show on offshore oil processing. So look forward to seeing you next week. Michael might be back by then, so he'll see you then. I'll be back in my normal spot. So from everyone here at the show, thank you for watching and for listening, and we will talk to you later.